Okay, so I'm going to, like I said, this month we are going to be doing flowers, and I want to show you how to make different kinds of flowers and also some basics on how to approach making things like flowers. I'm sure all of you must be doodling a few flowers here and there when you have the time. I used to do a lot of flowers also, and then later on, I wanted to draw realistic looking flowers, and I felt that the most complicated flower would be the rose. And I really, really tried. And I mean, this is probably at the age of 10 or 12 when I said, I have to crack it. If I can draw the rose, then I have really achieved it. I achieved it. I drew a rose very well by the time I was 12, and then realized that there are many more complicated flowers in the world that but it helped knowing how to draw a rose, because then I knew how to approach every other flower. But it took me a while to become comfortable with that. Yes, yeah.
When I had just joined, I remember you had taught us about flowers. We had done sunflower and orchid.
Good. So we are not doing an orchid today, thank goodness. We are going to do daisies and sunflower and this blue colored flower that I've shared a picture of. And what I'm going to show you is a basic structure of how to draw a flower. And also, when painting, what kind of techniques you can use to paint the flower. So today we will use watercolors. Is everyone comfortable with watercolors? Yeah, so we'll use watercolors, and I'll show you some techniques of blending the watercolor, understanding consistency of paint, and we will use this technique for painting more and more different kinds of flowers with more and more colors and more complications and details. So let me show you the pictures I have selected for the class. They have been shared on the group. So if you have access to the flowers, that's great. I mean, the reference images. But if you don't, that's fine too, because it's not as if you need to look at the reference image. I just want you to observe it so you can see what we are going to make. And then I'm going to show you how to make it any case. So you just need to follow me and we should be fine. Of course, we have a sunflower because it's just so beautiful. And then we have this blue colored flower. I don't know what it is, but there are many flowers like that which have 5 petals, which have a blue and white coloring. And I want to show you how to create this kind of color variation, going from no color to at least one color. And then next week we will move from one color to 2 colors. All right, so let's take a look at these flowers. Normally, when we approach making a flower like that, you, well, as a beginner, we start making the flower like this. You will make a circle and then you'll start making these petals, and everything, all the petals look the same. And then this flower doesn't look too realistic. So, what we have to do is change the way we draw flowers. Notice how the petals are not exactly the same. There is a slight variation in them. You see that the edge of the pollen circle is also a little wobbly. So it's not a plain circle. So we will make a wobbly line. So Kriti, I'm going to describe all this and I'm going to make all this later so you can follow me afterwards. So what I want you to do is just observe these tips that I'm giving you and then later on draw with me. So look at the shape of the petal also. It's not always round, though it does look round. The best thing when you are looking at a reference image is that you can observe the size, shape, unique proportions of all the elements. And I normally like to distribute the petals according to how I see them first, instead of just starting from one, then go to the next and next and next, and then have an odd number of petals and odd shapes also. So each petal can be drawn differently and with a cute observation. So first thing I'm doing is drawing these 5-6 petals that I see fully, and they're not all at the same distance from each other. Then you will see some petals which are underlapped. This is a new word I have coined because there is no such word as underlapped. But there are things that get lapped by objects or overlapped by objects. So the blue petals are drawn afterwards, after we draw the pink petals, because we can then draw them in the spaces between the pink outline petals. See? And you can then also decide on how many petals you want and how tall they need to be. So the petals in this flower at the bottom are slightly shorter because of foreshortening. Foreshortening occurs when objects come towards us or they're folding towards the front. But we can ignore that for the moment. And this is how we complete our flower. Now there is a gap over here, pretty big, so I'm going to use the same logic as I have used in observation to draw the rest of the petals and fill up this gap. And this is how our flower can look. Now we are not going to make the flower look exactly like that. We are going to take some cues from this and then make our flower look somewhat like this. And then we will also make all the, or maybe multiple other flowers around this one, maybe a flower above, on the side, and make it look like a busy meadow of daisies. All right. So if you have any questions, just reserve them for the moment. Let me finish drawing and you can draw with me. And if you're not getting some things, then you can ask me for clarification. Okay? All right. So I'm using just part of my book. I'm just going to use half of my book. Sorry, this is getting in the way. Yeah. So we're going to make all the 3 flowers on this one page. We are not going to make them very big. So the first set of flowers, we're going to make them in a square that's about this big. But we won't draw the square first. We will draw the flowers first. And then we will draw a square in such a way that the flowers look like they're bleeding out of that square. So follow me on this. Then we can draw the sunflower on top and the little blue flower at the bottom. We're going to do the drawing bit pretty fast. Excuse me. And then we are going to paint each of them in bits and pieces. Excuse me. So let's start from the center. I'm making the center of my flower about this size. So this is how I'm going to draw that line. It's a little broken line. And I'm making something that resembles a circle. Now let's draw a petal about 2 times the height of the center of the circle. So you have this height and then go above about so much. So draw the sides first like this. Don't draw them as one continuous line because then you get a very boring U shape. And then join it with almost like a lopsided M. There's a little divot at the end here. So now this petal is drawn at a 12 o'clock position if this were a watch face. So this is 12, this would be 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Let's draw one that's maybe between 7 and 8. It doesn't have to be exact. something like this. And then one which is slightly flatter on the other side. It can also be a little fat. Now let's fill up the space in between with a couple more petals. We are not looking to keep equal spaces between the petals, so you really don't have to worry about that. And then the last one can be somewhat like this. Now we have 6 petals which are not all at the exact opposites from each other. Now we can use the same thing, same kind of shapes to fill the spaces in between. Now in all of this, remember that we are trying to more or less make a circle out of this. So if one petal has become slightly shorter, then the filler petals, which are the petals we are doing now, you can make one of them slightly longer and even fatter maybe. So as far as possible, we should try to not have two petals come and join at the same point. That looks very boring. As it turns out, my flower has become too big. This one has become too big. So I'm making the next one slightly smaller, slightly lower. And this time round, maybe I'll make the petals in different directions. And if you happen to come too close to the previous flower, then underlap your petals. Isn't it so strange there isn't a word that's an opposite of overlap? And let's make a third flower over here. Now, all these flowers will have some leaves. So what we'll do now is make a rectangle around these in such a way that some of the parts of the flower stick outward a little bit. This makes for a very interesting graphic because it does create some borders, but it also keeps the graphic more interesting. And what we're going to do is some negative painting. So let's draw some leaves coming out of the flowers. Just draw some stalks like these. and some serrated leaves filling up the space. So the leaves will not come out of the box. The leaves are inside the box, creating that texture underneath the flowers. And the flowers are the heroes, and they will stick out of the box, giving us an area of interest. So basically, I've just filled out the empty spaces in such a way that the leaves are moving outward. They're not clashing into each other, and as far as possible, you don't make vertical and horizontal patterns. How's it looking for everyone? Is this okay? Now, while you're drawing, just a little note. Please, any of you, I have not seen your notebooks, don't write dates for our paintings before we make the paintings. Okay? In school, we're usually taught to write the date somewhere on the right or the left, or then you write the topic, flowers, or something. That's not how we do dating and titling for art. All we need to do is first figure out the composition of the page, and then after everything is done, we have to write the date and the title if need be. And I'll show you how to make the title today after the composition is done. Is everyone done with this, or do you need a minute? 1 minute, okay. Shall we move to the sunflower? Now, the sunflower is very similar to this flower. What's different are the proportions. So while in the daisy, remember we made the circle in the center. This is like the pollen center, and then we made the petals about 2 times the size of the center. In the case of this particular sunflower, the petals are going to be smaller, but the center of the seed center or the pollen center is going to be really big. So if I were to measure it, you'll notice If this is the center, how big are the petals? I'll just take this and come bring it to the side. The petals, the outermost petal also is not as big as the center. See? So which means that they are a little more than half of the center. And these proportions are very important to be able to draw the right kind of flower. Then also the shape of the petals is slightly different. They are very nice and rounded along the middle and they taper towards the end. So let's decide on how big our flower is going to be. That's about this big. And the center can be about this big. But if you make the center this big, then the flower's petals are going to be that big and it's going to be rather large on this page. So this is how you define the spacing. Use your hands and use your pencil and visualize what you're going to draw. A lot of the drawing or composition is done before even touching the pencil in this manner. So let's make a center now. Same kind of wobbly line. Measure the center. This is about half. And you could measure that distance on all sides. So I'm just making a dot on the top, left, right and bottom. So I know how far it has to go. Just about half of the circle on either side. And then I'm going to start making petals in such a way that I can fit 1, 2, 3, 4 petals in these 4 directions and then at least 2 petals in between these spaces, about 12 in all. And this is how the petals will look. You make them round and pointed towards the end, but you don't pinch the corners. So what you do not do is make them like this. This will really look bad. So you make the shape like that and come and join it like this without pinching the tips. Again over here. And then similar petals on the sides, and some of them you can also overlap while you're drawing this first row. They don't all have to be equally bulbous and they don't all have to fit exactly around this. You can make some of them already overlapping and some of them slimmer as well. According to the reference image, they all start off fairly narrow at the center and then they become wide and then they taper at the end. Now there is also one more thing that is happening in some petals is like if I have made this shape like this, in some petals you will see that there could be like a fold coming out like this. And you can draw these things arbitrarily on different petals. Some places you have one line which goes all the way to the end, to the top. And then we can start drawing the petals in the background. In the second row, let's say, not the background, that won't be accurate. So there could be even 2 layers in the back. Now here's the thing, sometimes when you have multiple petals, you can check by rotating your book and seeing whether you're making the same shape throughout, or is the shape of your petal changing when you change the direction that you have to draw it in. Often when I've had to draw petals on the sides, my petals become either too shallow or too fat, and then when I have to draw them at the bottom, they become too long. All that is fairly normal. All right. Now, somewhere in the center of the flower also, you will see that the texture made in the center is slightly different. You will see a very beautiful pattern of lines or dots. These are seeds that almost spiral outward in a very beautiful Fibonacci kind of pattern. So we are going to make a few textural circles, ovals in the center, but it's rather tedious to make them all over. So just make some circles which are becoming slightly bigger as you come towards the periphery of that inner form, and similarly around that inner circle you will make these squiggles. They look fairly similar, but the texture will look slightly different once it's painted in different colors. And then towards the periphery of that we can make some dots like this. Much of this is going to be colored, so you don't really have to bother with texturing too much, but putting in a little bit of pencil texture really helps.
Ma'am, my sunflower is not looking like a sunflower.
Array, okay, let's see. You want to share a picture? Okay, let me see. Let me check it. A little to your left. Move it a little to your left. Okay, a little more. No, we can work with this. So, if you can share a picture on the group now, I will change the lines and I'll show you. But this flower is perfectly okay. We can go with this for now.
Maybe the center is very small, that's all.
That could be a reason. And also the line quality. If you've drawn the line too hesitant, excuse me. So if you have drawn the line like this, then this changes the overall texture of the petal. It doesn't look like a petal anymore. It looks like something rather heavy. So best is that you can draw one line, and if you feel hesitant about it, if you think that you're not going to get the right shape, break the line. First make the line in the air and then make the line very light, and instead of going over and over this part, break it and then make it like this. So take your time in making the line. Now if I want to complete this shape here, you might be afraid that what if it comes straight, because you don't have control over the line. So what you were doing over here, you can do over here as well, but draw a little part and stop And then from there, you know where to take it. So take it slowly over there to the next part, and then so on. So automatically you get a much lighter line. Now, if you are thinking about proportion, that the center is small and then your petals have become too large, even that won't really matter if your line is good. You will be satisfied with the picture. So for now, when we are painting, just reduce the lead, the graphite, by erasing a little bit. Then the lines won't be so prominent, and after we color it, everything should be slightly better. Okay, now the last flower. This is the one that we're going to paint first. This one doesn't have a center. So we will take a dot in the center. I'm drawing it in this gap in the middle. And I'm going to make a circle around that dot. Now I have to draw 5 petals, which means that I have to divide this circle into 5 parts. So if I make one part over here, then the next 2 parts I can make like this at the bottom. And then divide these big parts into 2. So somehow we managed to get a 5 part circle. They're not equal, but that won't matter. Now, in these 5 parts, we can use these lines to draw one part of the petal, which is again the sides. And then we go outside the circle and create a wobbly line like that. Then we can leave a gap where we feel that they have a lot of space and create some more wobbly lines to end that. We can spread these lines out a little bit so that it looks like the petal is falling over towards our side. And we can modify some lines also, like I've gone a little beyond where I had demarcated that petal and I got something like this. So the 5 part partition that we have made is just an indication, a general guideline of where you can make the petals, but you have all the freedom to change the lines if the need arises. And then of course we can get rid of all these construction lines if they are visible. And in the center we make these pollen by just drawing little oval shapes like these. There are some pollen stringy shapes which we can make, but they won't even be visible. Okay, I'm going to give you 4 more minutes to finish all the flowers, and then we are going to start painting them rapidly, moving from one to the other, because you have to finish this in the 20 minutes. The advantage of painting quickly is that you don't give yourself too much time to doubt yourself. Overthinking can be debilitating. Let me know if you're done. We still have 3 minutes to go. If you're done sooner, then we can start sooner. Okay, Manisha is done. I think Sia's also done. She's merrily walked away also. We have another 2 minutes. Okay, is everyone done? Right, so for painting, keep a rag handy. Kriti, I'm using this kit. Do you have this kit for painting or do you have another kit?
No, I have this. This is fine, right?
Yeah, looks fine. Are those tube colors or is it the 24 color kit?
No, they're tubes.
Okay, so what you can do is, do you have a palette or something?
Yes.
So in the palette, take out some colors, but don't wash your palette after every use because we keep using the same colors over and over again. All the colors can be rehydrated. So what I normally recommend is if you've got a palette which has got maybe 10 or 12 dimples, you can put one different color in all of them. So it will mimic the cake colors. And then you might have some larger areas on the palette where you can mix them. So you can take some color from those divots, mix them over here and use them for painting. If not, you can do the same thing even on a ceramic plate or a plastic plate or something like that. All right. Now, the first thing we have to do is on the daisies, we have to create some shadows because the petals are actually white and they're not going to be visible just by keeping them white. So, we will make a color using a little bit of cerulean blue, and then after that we will put a little bit of gray in that. So now this gray is made using black, burnt umber and ultramarine blue. You'll see a little bit of blue in here, a little bit of brown and black. So I mix that and I keep this ready as a generic gray color. But before gray, this is just plain cerulean blue. Use a brush which has a nice tip, and only in a few places where you see the petals overlapping, you can paint a shape like that. And don't go into the center. It doesn't have to be too dark. In fact, it can be lighter than this. So only underneath the petals that are being overlapped, and again, not all of them. And if a little bit of the blue goes outside of the flower, that's fine because we are going to be painting that also in green, and that will absorb this blue very conveniently. Now on any one side, use the same blue color to create this crescent-like shape, which means that there is some shadow of the yellow central circle falling on the rest of the petals also, which means the light is coming from one side. See, like this. Now we can take a little bit of the gray, very, very little and very, very light. And you can use a thinner brush to make some, yeah,
Which which one's the cerulean blue?
this is cerulean blue. It's a very bright color.
Oh.
What color have you used?
I used the blue nearest to the palette that we're using.
This one?
Yeah.
That's okay. It's cobalt blue. It's fine if it will be a little less bright, but it's okay. That's not the end of the world.
Okay.
All right, now the gray I'm going to use has to be really light. So best is to test it on some paper. See, it's about this light. And I can make it darker by going over the color again. So this color I will use on the petals and just a few of them. So how do I do this? I first just touch the tip of the brush and then press it down and then bring it towards the outside. So these are the preliminary layers that you paint to create depth. It's a little difficult sometimes to put these colors in when there are other colors in the painting because of the fear of making it too dark maybe. And because watercolor can be overlapped, you can make really nice subtle shadows also by going over the same sections, even the blue parts, to make them slightly deeper. And remember how we've drawn these the lines in the sunflower. You'll also have a few lines in the daisies. So just with the tip of the brush, you can make those. Brush control is really good comes to good use in painting flowers. So this should be enough. It's quite subtle. And now we will mix together a sap green, raw umber on one side of the sap green, like that. This is raw umber. Actually, this would be raw umber. I have two raw umbers in this one kit by mistake. And we are going to use a combination of colors. So sap green mixed with raw umber and sap green mixed with cobalt blue. And we're going to do a wash in the background. So how do we make a wash? You can take your color in a medium sized brush and paint in the large sections first, like this. Don't come too close to the flowers. And you can keep changing the color you pick up. So in some places you will pick up more sap green, in some places you will pick up more cobalt blue. And then using a fine brush like this, load the brush with the same colors and use that brush. Oh, my brush is not at all nice here. Sorry about that. So yeah, nice fine brush like that. You can load the same colors in that brush, dip it in the wet part, and then drag that color into the crevices while the paint is still wet. This way you won't get uh, any patches, unwanted patches. Sometimes patches are wanted. And if your paint is sufficiently wet, then like places like this, even though I have taken a break and painted those corners, I can always come back and start painting again, and this edge won't be a problem. So you use the big fat brush to paint large sections quickly, and then you come with a thin brush and paint the smaller sections cleverly.
Ma'am,
Hmm.
what were the colors you used?
I use sap green, sap green, cobalt blue, and raw umber. So raw umber is a color between black and white,
Okay.
and cobalt blue is the color close to the palette amongst the blues on the lid side, on the joint side, and sap green is the green which is on the farther side.
Okay.
It's right next to white. Right next to white on the long side. See, you do this part very slowly and carefully. So this is called negative painting. We are trying to paint the flowers, or the subject of the painting is actually the flowers, but the flowers are white. So in order for the flowers to be visible, we have to paint around them, which is the negative space. And a lot of times you will see that in paintings, this can be done for subjects which are lighter in color, or in case they are supposed to be in darkness, if there's a special light that falls on them, something like that. Even then, this is a good technique to use. Basically, we are painting around the silhouette of that shape. And whenever you're painting with the little brush, always keep it loaded. Keep the brush loaded so that you don't take away too much paint from the wash. You're always adding more to that space. These are just tiny techniques that I wanted to show you in today's topic, so that uh, you become very comfortable with painting, even if you're unsure about the shapes of the flowers, if your drawing is still not up to your expectation, the painting part can be very satisfying. As usual, I think I have taken this on very ambitiously. It's already 7:20. So we'll just finish this as best as we can, but we'll come back and complete the other flowers or part of even this next week. Okay, now here's another way of painting this. So in this section, I am going to paint the outlines first, but I'm going to paint them with a lot of liquid paint. So they're not going to be thin outlines, they're going to be rather fat outlines. And the paint is fairly wet also. Now, in the past, this is what I was taught that I make the outline first and then you paint. But sometimes then the outline looks really thick and dark because it dries up very fast. So I found the first technique much, much more reliable. Now, while the paint is wet, we can also put in more colors if we want. Like we can put a deeper blue, a thicker, deeper blue along the edges of some flowers. Like I'll take some color from here, add it to this, and just drop it very close to the petal carefully so that I get a very nice shadow effect. This is called the wet on wet technique. And if I do this in the sections which have dried, I might get a very stiff line there. So I have to be rather careful. See, already it started looking so much more three-dimensional, no? Now, if you do have patches somewhere, if you're not satisfied with the painting, don't worry. This is just layer one. We are going to make at least two more layers in this. All right, now quickly let's paint the sunflower. Is everyone done with the daisy? Now for the sunflower, I'm hydrating these two colors. I'm using lemon yellow and I'm going to use gamboge.
Ma'am,
Yes.
aren't we supposed to paint the inside of the daisy yellow?
Yes, we are. We are still waiting on this to dry and then we'll go and paint this. So while we are waiting, we'll paint the sunflower. So again for the sunflower, this is what we're going to do. We are going to start painting from the petals and bring them in towards the center. Don't paint the whole center, but paint the edges. And the best way to paint this is to keep changing the color that you pick. So if you pick the lemon yellow once, then pick the gamboge the second time round, and then go back to lemon yellow and don't wash your brush in between. See, this is how you do a quick painting. You keep pulling your brush inward. Press and pull. Press and pull. press. So start from the tip, then press down, press and make your brush flat. Like this. At any point, it's always advisable to have at least two colors in your brush, I feel, to make the painting a little richer. Now, since the sunflower is made of very light colors, we can add some more of this in the center and it won't look too patchy, and pull the color inward towards that second circle on the inside. See, I'm pulling all the color inward, and here we are going to keep it wet. And now in the center we will add a burnt umber, and this color will then spread in the wet paint like this. So we want it to spread. It needs to be a little thick and we want it to spread. Not too much, but definitely a little towards the edges. This is the texture that we want. See? It looks so much fun. You don't have to do anything to get the texture of the outside edges of the sunflower. And right in the middle, you can also put a little bit of cobalt blue. Now, if your brown spreads beyond, like how mine has gone and spread quite a bit, don't worry too much. These colors will become much lighter when they dry. And I'm going to just pick some up and pull them inward like that with a damp brush. So wiping my brush and pulling it in. You don't even need to do that really. Let it flow. This is again a wet on wet technique. Alright, so this is all we're going to do this week, and next week we will complete these flowers. Any questions, anyone?